Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and as you can see with me, I have one of our most distinguished guests, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, who has served as ambassador to nearly half of the Gulf. He has been ambassador to Saudi Arabia, to Oman, to UAE more than once, and he has also served in the capacity of secretary, etc. He has experience as a scholar, as a diplomat. So today we are going to essentially review the peace deal and the ceasefire agreement that the United States has made with Iran. Some people see this as Donald Trump finally finding a way, an exit strategy that allows him to brag that it is a better deal than Obama's. Most others, including Israeli media, have labeled this as surrender MOU. So today we will try and get a diplomatic perspective from Ambassador Ahmad. Welcome to Khanversations, sir.
Thank you very much.
So I just wanted to give an update. We heard about a couple of hours ago that the Iranians have said that they are closing the Strait of Hormuz, which really means that is the ceasefire on or not? We don't know. Donald Trump and the Americans are pretending as if the ceasefire is on, which from an Iranian perspective will be dangerous, because if they allow the Americans to pretend that the ceasefire is on while there is such egregious violence in Lebanon, that could become the new normal, that there is constant violence in Lebanon while Iran and the US move forward on the ceasefire, because there are a lot of temptations for Iran too. But nevertheless, American negotiators apparently have already arrived in Switzerland. The Iranians have not. The American military is saying that there is no movement on the Iranian military side. So they are saying that it doesn't appear as if the Iranians have closed the Strait of Hormuz. We will know in a few hours if the traffic goes down. I could not determine whether there has been a drop in the traffic from Strait of Hormuz as a result of Iran's announcement. But anyway, coming back to it, sir, how do you assess the entire ceasefire agreements, those 14 points, and the manner in which it was done, which was quite surprising? It was supposed to be done in DC, then it was supposed to be done in Switzerland. There were talk about Donald Trump himself going, and then blah, it was done in the Palace of Versailles, where Germany surrendered to the Allies.
There are many aspects which we need to discuss with regard to what has happened recently. Very quickly, once the war started, within 2 or 3 weeks, it was clear that what Netanyahu had told Donald Trump wasn't going to happen. He had promised him that we would have regime change, a new government would emerge in Iran, and that it would be the great triumph that successive American presidents since the Islamic Revolution have been waiting for. In turn, Donald Trump would then have become the greatest American president in their history. It was very clear it was not going to happen. And desperately, Donald Trump has been looking for a way out. He likes to posture, therefore he wanted to be on the world stage and claim victory. He went about it the wrong way. He used some extreme rhetoric, threatening to annihilate Iran, threatening to destroy their civilization, all kinds of extremely wild language which did no credit to him. The situation on the ground, on the other hand, was quite different from the American and Israeli rhetoric. The Iranians gave an extraordinary account of themselves. They were able to respond to the attacks with some fierce attacks of their own through missiles and drones. They also started attacking American assets all across the Gulf and threatened energy assets as well of the GCC countries. And then they played their trump card, and that was the closure of the Hormuz. Astonishingly, we hear that Donald Trump and his officials were not prepared for the Hormuz being closed, though it is the CIA is pointing out that consistently over several years they have been saying that if you start conflict against Iran, Hormuz will be closed almost immediately. The United States appeared to be totally ill-prepared for the economic consequences of the closure of Hormuz. And that is, there was a disaster for the global economy, disaster for the American economy, and what have you. So what has happened is Donald Trump was very anxious for a quick end to the conflict. What the Americans use this term off ramp. He needed to get off. And that is why you have an MOU. It's a very rare thing that at an apex level, in order to close the conflict, you have an MOU, which leaves many of the larger issues to be negotiated later. Uh, as you look at it, as you go over it line by line, word by word, you sense that this is really going back to the scenario that prevailed just before the war started. USA and Iran were already engaged in dialogue on the nuclear issue, and there was actually no need to have gone into this war. And indeed, 2.5 months later, the war does not seem to have achieved anything as far as the Americans were concerned. So it is very obvious to Donald Trump that he was allured into this against his better judgment. He was played, as it is said. Netanyahu played him. He focused on his ego, pressed the right buttons, promised him El Dorado, and delivered nothing. For Donald Trump, this is an extraordinary setback. It's very easy to get him on board because he has got such a persona that is so egoistical. But having said this, if you have failed him in terms of what you promised and you have embarrassed him and made him look like an idiot on the world stage, he is going to be totally unforgiving. So what you find now, this extraordinary rift that has become public now between Netanyahu and Donald Trump and between the United States and Israel, the extraordinary language that the vice president has used, saying that the United States is the only country that Israel has anywhere in the world that is on their side, and that 2/3 of the weapons used by Israel are American made and paid for by the American taxpayer. This indicates that this is not a temporary rift. It is not like what happened earlier, where this was made up, and at the end of the day, Israel continued to dictate matter. I personally feel that this is a serious development because Netanyahu let Trump down. He has embarrassed Donald Trump. He, at a time when he is politically very fragile, he is facing elections in November and is going with a weak hand at a time when all the polls are showing that he could lose the Congress and might even lose the Senate. So this is something that the Americans would not have wanted to be in. They had no choice. The Iranians have got almost their entire agenda. They got the closure, they got the Hormuz opened on their terms. They are allowed to sell oil on their terms. The financial restrictions have gone. So many of the concessions that have been made immediately by the Americans and indeed are already operational. Because do recall here that the agreement has already been signed by the two presidents. So it's an operational agreement. You didn't need the confabulation at Switzerland for this. What was going to happen at Switzerland and might in fact happen all over again is to discuss the modalities of the next steps, which is important, extremely important. And they've given themselves only 60 days, though obviously there is a provision for extending this matter. Overall, I would say that Donald Trump is a very bitter and angry man. He is very riled as far as Netanyahu is concerned. He has far greater respect for the Iranians than he had earlier. Many of the remarks that he has made about them, genuinely, they appear to be sincere and are laudatory of the people who faced his wrath in terms of military assault and gave off their return, and in return, they were able to protect their interests and indeed dictate terms to the Americans.
So if you look at the memorandum of understanding, I went through it and I was actually planning to publish an annotated version of it, like the entire memorandum one side and my comments, but New York Times beat me to it. So I decided that anyway, they're going to get higher traffic.
All of us are doing this exercise in some shape or form.
Yeah. So it was fascinating to me It was like saying if you had asked Iran, what is your wish list, your dream wish list, they got it. I mean, first of all, they're going to give them a waiver starting now to sell oil on the market at market price while the oil is still up above $70. So that means billions of dollars. They are going to give them upfront at least 12 billion, if not 26, during the first 60 days, which are Iranian money, but they will be unfrozen. And then a bonanza of over $300 billion, which will, and I think the Iranians are going to out negotiate Trump and hang on to some aspect of the nuclear program until they get the 300 and maybe even Trump's term is over. So Iranians got nearly everything. But do you think, so to me, I get the impression that the Iranians should now be more invested in preserving this, isn't it? As opposed to Donald Trump, who is being attacked so vociferously at home, even now with more and more Republicans who are usually mouthpiece, they speak more for Israel than the United States. So he's getting a lot more criticism, even from Fox News commentators, etc. So do you think that Iran is going to try its best to preserve this memorandum of understanding, or do you think that some of the hardliners in Iran will also try to spoil this?
I think Iran is totally committed to the success of this agreement. They could never have got a better document, and I'll talk about this in a minute. As far as the United States is concerned, it is a deeply polarized society. For far too long, Iran has been demonized, and it has been painted in diabolical terms. And there are sections of the American community, including political leaders, who would like to see Iran wiped off the map. But now much more, there is something even more interesting and complicated. Two things. Number one, that MAGA is deeply split. There is a small group that is Israel first, but there is a more powerful group that is America first. And sections of the America first who dislike this whole conflict and dislike Israel, many of them are anti-Semitic as well. So there are real changes taking place on the right of the American political scenario. This is the point. Now, with regard to Donald Trump, nobody in the Republican Party can dump him just yet. The primary results that have emerged over the last few weeks indicate overwhelmingly that candidates supported by Donald Trump tend to do far better than those who are not supported by him. So I think on the eve of elections, nobody in the Republican Party is going to stick his neck out and alienate himself from the American president. This is as far as the US is concerned. As far as Iran is concerned, they ensured that this is a package deal as far as regional security is concerned. Mm-hmm. And they have ensured the specific reference to Lebanon. It is also very clear that while Israel is not a party to the agreement, it was a party to the war, but the Americans ensured that it is not going to be party to the agreement, but if it was there, there would be no agreement. There you find the Iranians have ensured that responsibility for peace in Lebanon is with the Americans. It is vested in the Americans. And Americans understand that. Americans also want this MOU to succeed they really want it to succeed. And the one weapon that the Iranians have, which has an immediate impact, oil prices went up, and the minute the IRGC announced, or somebody announced from Iran, that the armed forces have announced the closure of the Hormuz, price has crossed $80 immediately. So, and it hurts the Americans immediately. So I would say that it's completely clear for all of us that the Americans have to get their act together, use all the clout that they have in Tel Aviv, and ensure that Netanyahu behaves himself. Now, he has a record of cocking a snook at the Americans whenever he can. He has humiliated Biden several times during the Gaza war. He's insulted Obama as well by going across and speaking at the Congress, which he did during Biden's regime as well. He is now feeling for the first time that there is a limit to the freedom that he has enjoyed so far. The mistake he made was this desperate urgency to get Donald Trump on board as far as the conflict with Iran is concerned. And everyone else has been telling us now that he really wanted this 25 or 30 years ago. Absolutely desperate to go to war with Iran along with the Americans. He achieved this within a few days. One encounter with Donald Trump on 11th February, and the president was eating out of his hand. But what he did not anticipate is that not getting what you promised, you have made Donald Trump a serious enemy, and he is not going to be in a forgiving mood for some time, for a
He's
long
also,
time to come.
he's also quite petty and intolerant. So, for example, day before yesterday, he made a petty, like a petulant comment about Georgia Meloni begging for a photograph because he's upset with how she responded when he was critical of the Pope. So he doesn't forget slights, and he keeps coming back.
We are aware of it in our own country. And I
Yes,
don't need to remind you, after Op Sindoor,
yes.
he's been very vengeful as far as India is concerned. There's no forgiveness in his heart, where his personal ego is concerned, where he is his strutting on the world stage is diluted, where he at that time a year ago genuinely believed or had persuaded himself that he's on the verge of getting the Nobel Peace Prize, and that but for India's posture he might have got it. A year has passed. No forgiveness from that man. So
You know,
yes, I would say that the way he has behaved with Meloni, and now he is behaving with Netanyahu. I would say that whenever his personal stature is compromised, something that he has said, and he becomes a laughing stock rather than looked up to as a great statesman and military general, he is unforgiving in its entirety.
it's remarkable what is happening here in the US. I've been following JD Vance very closely, and his speech or his observations from the White House podium were stunning, where he basically said that Israel, I mean, he said that 2/3 of Israeli weapons are made in the US, and the Israel would really not survive without the US. Same thing that Donald
Many
Trump
things
is
which
doing.
are well known to all of
Yeah.
us.
But what is to me fascinating about this development is JD Vance, who is expected to be running for office in 2028, is sacrificing or taking a massive risk. And so I'm thinking that you see in America, we do a lot of polling, especially when you are in a campaign mode. So is the internal team of JD Vance telling him that taking a tough stance with Israel or Netanyahu is not necessarily as big a risk as it used to be in the past? Because if you notice, Marco Rubio, who's going to be his primary opponent, the main contest is going to be between this on the Republican side, Rubio versus JD Vance. He's mum on this issue. We have not heard anything from Rubio critical of Netanyahu or of Israel or anything else. So it's fascinating to see how things are evolving in the US. But I do want to come back and ask you this question. If you recall, JD Vance said there is no other head of state who's supporting Israel, and I kept thinking about the Prime Minister of India, who said that with full conviction that we stand with Israel. Do you think it was a calculated mistake, or is there going to be any consequence to India? Because it is quite possible that India didn't anticipate Iran coming out so strongly at the end of this war. And Israel so alienated, especially from the United States, as a result of this war. So, how do you think that the think tank in Delhi is assessing what is happening with the MOU?
My own view is this: Iran is a very cerebral country. It is a pragmatic country. It calculates very carefully the consequences of certain policy options. It is not churlish. It does not act impulsively. Very qualities which distinguish it quite remarkably from their opponents in the United States. Iran, to my mind, values the relationship with India It has valued the relationship over a period when there have been many signals from India which could be and should be read negatively in Tehran. We have constantly subordinated our relationship with Iran to our ties with the United States and have let the Iranian side down on several occasions. On many occasions, we have actually taken action that has been at the expense of our own strategic interests. The development of Chabahar,
Yeah.
the connectivity that we had looked at with regard to Afghanistan and Central Asia, also with Moscow. We are today totally missing in action with regard to any serious connectivity project, though Chabahar and the connectivity options were offered to us in 2003, more than 20 years ago. So Iran has understood this. Iran does not take any action vis-a-vis India that would damage our relationship on long-term basis. Immediately after Prime Minister's visit to Tel Aviv and his standing side by side with Netanyahu, within a few days we needed Iranian approval to get the LPG ships through the Hormuz, and Iran immediately approved that. No conditions were attached, and at a time when India was facing a serious crisis at home in terms of LPG, Iran was there for us. My view at that time was and remains that Iran showed its civilizational status. Iran has a long memory and very substantial strategic thinking. Iran values its ties with India on the basis of the relations we had in the past and the relationship we are likely to have in the future. It did not judge India on the basis of what had happened somewhat spontaneously on February 26th when the Prime Minister landed there. Did not use it against India. There has not been a single sentence of praise from the Iranian leadership, hammered mercilessly by the Americans. The top leadership assassinated, the 7,000 people dead, so much damage inflicted upon them, but they have remained very stable, very sensible, very thoughtful. I believe that if India plays its cards well, carefully think through what are the ways we can go forward with the Iranians, I believe that we can restore the relationship as we used to have before. As far as Israel is concerned, I would say very carefully here, India's approach to West Asia and indeed to all its relationships, all these relationships are bilateral and transactional, including with the Israelis. India does not have alliances. When we say strategic autonomy, we mean it in the literal sense of the word. No alliances with anybody. Relationships, yes. Substantial relationships, yes. But no alliances. Give and take relationship. We also don't get involved with security issues in different parts of the world. People like me have been saying that with regret that we don't get involved collectively. We don't view West Asia collectively and play the role that we need to. But as far as India is concerned, it values all relationships on bilateral basis, talks to as many people as possible, but ensures that there is a substantial give and take on both sides, whether it is Iran or Saudi Arabia or UAE or Israel for that matter.
I want to turn to the Gulf and I think that $300 billion will be coming out of the Gulf pockets. It does appear because both J.D. Vance, Donald Trump are insisting that not a single penny from the American taxpayer is going to go to Iran. And that will be monitored very closely here in Washington by both Democrats and Republicans. Because like Ted Cruz said that, I don't understand this, you just destroyed Iran and now you're going to pay to rebuild Iran. So it escapes his logic. So the Gulf is probably going to pay a huge price for this war. I mean, their own reconstruction, and then on top of that, they have to probably pony up most of the $300 billion to rebuild Iran. If that happens, I'm not very sure that will happen. But there is also this perception that maybe the Gulf may not be able to recover from this war, even if they build alternatives to the Strait of Hormuz. How do you see the Gulf? Do you think there's a possibility that there might be significant changes within these countries itself as a result of this geopolitical debacle?
Firstly, with regard to this construction business, I think if the Iranians insisted on inserting this, I want to remind you that long ago, when the conflict was still on, the Iranians had told the Americans, we seek reparations from you.
Yeah.
You've done all this damage. You've murdered all these people. We had provoked you not at all. We were in dialogue with you. You've done this 3 times. We want you to now you will pay reparations. Now, as you know, reparations is a bad word. You can't use it at all unless someone has been thoroughly defeated, as in the case of Germany in the First World War.
Yeah.
So I would see this business of putting this figure down. There's no time frame attached with it.
Yeah.
It is basically Iran reminding the Americans that you owe us a lot. But I don't think we should, at this stage, take it more seriously than this. It is going to be at the bottom of so many things. It's a long list of things to go through, and it is at the bottom of many of those things. I don't think you should even, it is a reminder to the Americans that there is a price to be paid for your misadventure. We are not calling it reparations because we respect you, and you can't live with that politically at home. But this is at the end of the day what it is going to be. They have left the source of this funding wide open. Why should the Gulf pay anything? Why should anyone pay anything? What will happen is there will be, as assuming that everything goes well, the sanctions are lifted, significantly lifted. You have frozen assets returned to Iran. Yes, Iran moves slowly but surely towards becoming a normal presence in the region. Iran doesn't need reparations or funding. Iran will be able to issue tenders for reconstruction. This figure is a ballpark figure just placed there to embarrass the Americans rather than anything else. And they had to swallow it. With regard to the Gulf, the story is completely different, and we should not link it with this clause. The Gulf it is experiencing a very cruel dilemma. I have mentioned on several occasions on your program that the British created certain countries as they were leaving the region. They created Pakistan, and they created Israel, and they created the 6 countries of the GCC. It was always ensured from day one, as these states emerged on the world arena, that they would never be capable of looking after themselves. They would always depend on the West for their security. This has been true of Pakistan, this is certainly true of Israel, and it is true of the 6 GCC countries. Now, where the GCC countries, if you see, now Israel is threatened in the same way by the Americans, that you depend on us. And if we don't look after your security, you are incapable of looking after yourself. Pakistan has therefore, realizing this, has built up some alternative linkages with the Chinese and is a more adroit role player as far as this issue is concerned. The Gulf has a very, very cruel dilemma that where do they turn in order to ensure that their security is guaranteed? Obviously, one other consequence of this horrible conflict is that the United States has no credibility whatsoever as a security guarantor in the region. So the first thing the 6 countries of the GCC will do is to build relationship among themselves. They have to become cohesive. When the GCC was set up in 1981, it was in the context of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. But security, defense, are the areas where they have the least collaboration amongst themselves. The message that has come from this war is we need to get our act together. Coming together means compromising certain aspects or in terms of our autonomy and sovereignty or what have you. But defense is something that is crucial, long-term security. Israel, with 7 million people, has an army which is a formidable armed force. Why can the region, the Gulf region, not develop a similar armed force of world standard? They buy the best state of the art equipment from the Americans, but that is basically to sustain a partnership with the Americans, not to become a military force. I would say very strongly that the time has come for the Gulf countries to become a formidable military force. And
They have the resources.
sorry?
They have the resources. They have the
They
population.
have the resources, they have the equipment, but they have always contracted out their security and to the Americans. And now you find, you've known for the 10 or 15 years what the Iranians have done for the first time, attacking different countries. In fact, all of them. These were, you could say, in looking back, that these attacks were largely symbolic in character, and that they did not do the damage that would have happened if there had been total conflict. There have been symbolic, largely symbolic in character, and in many instances actually targeted American bases and American facilities. But the lesson is very clear, that the Gulf should not place itself in such a situation again. They've had many opportunities when they should have got their act together. When the Americans had turned against the Iraqis, first you had the Iran-Iraq war, the Gulf was largely protected because they were busy killing each other. But when you had the first Gulf War, the Gulf was very nervous. When you had the second Gulf War on Iraq, again the region was very nervous. But because nothing happened to threaten them, they took no action. Now what the Iranians have done, in a cautious manner, relatively limited manner, they have made it very clear to the region that you are vulnerable. So I would imagine that what is likely to happen is the following. Number one, that the GCC states will start discussing among themselves how they can build up their own military capabilities. Number one. Number two, they will have to engage with Iran very seriously and very substantially. Number three, they will look towards China and to some extent Russia in order to be broad players in the security scenario of the region. Not active players, because none of them wants to become an active, but the good officers, the same diplomatic capabilities that the Chinese used to bring Saudi Arabia and Iran together in 2023, that kind of diplomatic capability founded on their economic engagement with the region and their dependence on the region for their energy needs over the long term, I think China will be well placed to achieve this. Over a period of time, and I would imagine it could be within the next 5 to 10 years if all goes well, you could have a new security architecture in the region which is inclusive. It includes the GCC and the Iranians as well, and you would see it would be put together and guaranteed by China and by Russia. So I'm looking at this scenario for the time being.
You know, at the G7 summit, there was this, they were panning this camera around. You could see without being able to listen to the discussion. And there was this moment where I saw the Prime Minister of Qatar having a very animated conversation with MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed of UAE. This idea of the Gulf GCC becoming more than what it is at the moment, especially when it comes to matters of security. Muslims have failed. Neither the Arab League, nor the OIC, nor GCC, none of these have had a security dimension because they are unwilling to upset or threaten or animate the West. The West would have taken any attempts by either OIC or Arab League or GCC to become autonomous when it comes to security as a challenge to Western domination of the region. But given the odd foreign policy of UAE in the region, which is so out of sync with the rest of the countries, do you think it is still possible that the GCC could agree upon anything, whether with regards to Iran or shared defense given the new direction that UAE has taken with regards to the I2U2 or Abraham Accords?
We have some way to go. This is, I would say, this 2-month war is a body blow to the region, far more than the Gaza war was. At the end of the day, you could pretend that the Gaza war is connected with the Palestinians. It is locked away in a remote part of West Asia. It doesn't directly impact upon us. But the minute you had the warning from the 12-day war, 12-day war also the warning was not heeded because it was thought it's a limited war. After all the military doctrines that Israel and the Americans had spouted till then was that don't get into a direct conflict with Iran. Why? Because you don't know which way things will go. It will become a regional conflagration and it will have very severe consequences, and the outlook is very uncertain as well. But the Israeli Prime Minister was not deterred. So if you go back, you will see that at the end, by the time you came to the end of 2025, Israel was at the top.
Yeah.
Israel was at the top. They were, we were talking about it's the military hegemon. I myself said that Israel is the regional military hegemon, except that it depends totally on the Americans. But there is no divide between the two. That is what the situation was at that time. And you had a peace process in Gaza. Phase 1 had already moved forward. A board of peace meeting took place in early February. And then Netanyahu thought this is the golden. He played on Donald Trump's gullibility. If things have gone wrong, because till then we did not know the outcome of this encounter with the Iranians. And the last thing that either the United States or Israel would have anticipated is that Iran would give such a fitting and robust response to the attack upon itself. Today, it is a different strategic scenario. I have to change my remarks and my presentation. Iran is today the formidable presence in the region. That these two most powerful military forces in the world unleashed their maximum firepower upon this country, and the country gave them a fitting reply. It also damaged Israel quite a bit, by the way. Israel has kept that hidden, and they have not mentioned how many people have been killed. But the fact is that there has been considerable damage inflicted upon Israel, considerable damage inflicted upon the American. They may hide it, and openly the entire region, particularly the GCC countries, are insecure because Iran has come out looking so powerful. Also, it remains very close to China and very close to Russia. So I would say to you now, with regard to UAE, I would say that we should give them some time. Just as you and I are sitting together and reflecting on the implications of something that has happened over just the last 2 months, we should give the UAE time to reflect. I know that the UAE had reached out to Israel through the normalization process in August 2020, but I've also read reports that their relationship with Israel was overwhelmingly economic and technological. An attempt was made by the Israelis to say that no, they had a much closer relationship with the UAE when they said that we provided the security dome to the UAE. Yeah. And that is when the Iranians attacked Fujairah, making it very clear that the so-called dome is going nowhere. I would not, it's a sensitive matter. I would not like to speculate on where the UAE would go. But I cannot see a scenario in which the UAE would not work very closely with its other GCC brethren. It has to be an integral part of the GCC fraternity. Every fraternity, including the closest of families, have to have a give and take in terms of their relationships and their ambitions. I cannot see the arrangement that the Israelis had with the UAE Let it be an economic relationship or a technological, no problem. But the security interest and the long-term strategic interest of the UAE and of the other GCC countries is to be as close to each other as they possibly can be.
Hillary Clinton gave an interview a couple of days ago, and she was saying
Sorry,
that
who is that?
Hillary
Sorry to ask
Clinton,
you.
Hillary Clinton.
Hmm.
So she was saying, that people have been talking to all the former secretaries of state. So both Anthony Blinken and Hillary Clinton have come out and said on record that the same presentation that Netanyahu made to Donald Trump had been made to Obama as well as to
Absolutely
Biden,
correct.
and they simply did not buy this rubbish.
Absolutely.
The answer is very simple, that American presidents in that cases trusted their own intelligence rather than the rubbish that Netanyahu was peddling. But Hillary Clinton made an interesting observation. She was an Iran hawk. If you remember, she said, I will obliterate Iran. Those were her words. She had used that phrase while in the debates in 2000 with Obama. But she said, this was interesting, she said that even in 2009, when she was Secretary of State, Netanyahu, she said he was relentless. He was relentless. Not just Netanyahu, Ehud Barak, and all of them, where she used the word, were relentlessly coming to them every day and telling them that we want to attack Iran. Like Ehud Barak would call her and say, the planes are on the tarmac, it seems. Like, what do you mean? Well, the planes are ready to go on the tarmac. So Israel was constantly pressuring Hillary Clinton at that time. And she also said that two things she thought that were really very important for Netanyahu was, one, to completely decapitate Iran, and the other was to normalize with Saudi Arabia. And now 15 years later, we are looking at it, and Israel is not closer to either of the two goals.
You see what happened. You are absolutely right. Many of the remarks that are being made by these people publicly are well documented.
Yes.
This is not news to any one of us who has followed the literature. And there are books written by about Israeli foreign policy that is available in the public domain. We know. You remember that there is a pro-Israel conclave in the United States.
Yeah.
It is made up of very diverse characters. There is a Jewish lobby, of course, represented by IPAC. There has been the neocons, the Christian evangelists, the Jewish billionaires. All of them have been there, and they have been tapped from time to time. The George Bush Jr. was very much under the influence of the neocons. And if you remember, it's the neocons worked very hard on Clinton and were able to get the dual containment of Iran and Iraq. So the Iran was already in in their eye. Then when they went after 9/11, the Israelis refused to allow any discussion of why 9/11 had happened and demonized Saudi Arabia and said Saudi Arabia is behind all this because of its obscurantist writing and thinking. I was ambassador in Saudi Arabia at that time, and I studied this aspect very carefully. Within 2 days of 9/11, Ariel Sharon made a public statement on Israel radio. They will blame us for what has happened. They mean Americans. They will blame us for what has happened. What does this have to do with us? This is the result of extremist Islam. We must convey it to them very clearly. I got this quotation. It's not readily available, but it is there in my book, West Asia at War. You have to really struggle to locate it now. Immediately, I wrote a 20-page note for my ministry analyzing 1 month of media coverage on 9/11 in the United States, starting with New York Times, Washington Post, every media outlet. They carried exactly the same story. Saudi Arabia is the demon. Of course, you had 15 people who are of Saudi origin, but they shifted the entire attention from the failure of Oslo, the second Intifada, which they had very harshly put down. They were worried that the American attention might go to the Second Intifada, where they said we will break the bones, and
Yeah.
the complete reluctance to address the issue of Palestine. So they were afraid. Now, what has happened is this focus on Iran. I have sometimes wondered whether it is a genuine one or it is to shift American attention away from addressing the Palestine issue. Because there have been many occasions when the Americans reached out to Iran. There have
Yeah.
been many occasions and were subverted. Many occasions when the Iranians reached out. And I can go, you and I can go on and discuss a history
Even
of 25 years
even
all
while
over again.
especially while dealing with the Taliban, for example.
Yeah, Taliban is very important. There were 16 rounds of discussions between US and Iranian delegations in Geneva in the run up to this Iraq war in 2020, in 2002. 16 rounds of discussion, secret. They were terrified that the people might come to know in the United States. At that time, State Department ran it. But when Baghdad fell, the State Department was elbowed out. Pentagon took over, appointed a series of idiots who were in charge, and you saw the disaster that happened
Yeah.
because of that. Now, all over, even Hillary and all, their own, which is not only the Israel was agitating with you, they had a very fertile ground. Many of these people bought it.
Yeah.
It is Obama who see, the thing is, the initiative for the nuclear discussion came from Iran. It is Rouhani who got the approval of the supreme leader, went in for 2 years, had a solid team around him. Recall that photograph of Zarif sitting by himself and all the top leaders sitting in front of him. It was called P5+1.
Yes.
6 of them sitting in line. He's holding his own, got the negotiations done. It is Netanyahu who took pride in informing the international community that I persuaded Donald Trump to get rid of the JCPOA. I also want to remind the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She was very, very pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Within 1 year of the humiliation to which Obama had been subjected when at the congressional speech that Netanyahu delivered, they signed a military cooperation agreement with Israel valued at several $billions, regarded as the most valuable defense agreement US has had with the Israelis. That means the power of the pro-Jewish lobby, pro-Israel lobby is such that even at that time, Obama, it must have broken his heart to go in for that. But at that time, Israel was on a high. Yeah. Israel could do anything in Washington. They could do anything they wished in Washington during Trump's first term, during the term of Biden. These are all embarrassments. There is no justifying, no excusing the behavior of successive American leaders and the way they subordinated themselves to the Israeli, particularly to Netanyahu.
I mean, it is typical, Ambassador Saab. If you look at Obama, his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, his Vice President, Joe Biden, who never stopped saying that I have ironclad support for Israel. So he had like Israeli, hardcore pro-Israeli people all surrounding him. Obama, and the same with Donald Trump too. Look at Mike Huckabee. Donald Trump says Israel will not exist without America, and then Mike Huckabee pops up and says America will not exist without Israel. So we don't know
who. Christian evangelist. And
yeah.
you know, by now, most of these guys are retreating. Christian evangelists are not mentioned in Trump's second term.
Yeah.
The Jewish community in the United States is very deeply divided. Large numbers of young Jews have turned against Netanyahu. So many things have changed. It's the billionaires who are still holding forth. The billionaires, the billionaires, when Trump values billionaires, he has been so badly led. Now, what you and I should be talking, say, after a month or two, will Trump have the capacity, have the courage, have the strength
to
to
follow through.
continue to stand up to Netanyahu
I
one and
know.
a half months, 2 months later. Let us see
No,
that.
I not only that, I don't think that they can take any concrete steps policy wise because their own people will not act, even if Donald Trump makes this decision. Down the line, he's filled his administration with so many pro-Israeli hawks that they might actually refuse to act upon him. So this is my last question. Are you hopeful that this ceasefire will hold in spite of the Lebanon issue, or you think that we will come back to some kind of a limbo where there is no war, but there is also no peace, Ambassador?
I want to stick my neck out. I have never in my career, we have a word for certain people, two-handed diplomats. On the
Yeah.
one hand, on the other hand. I have never been, on the one hand, on the other hand, as I understand something when I'm speaking to you, I will speak honestly to you. I am not afraid of being proven wrong because I'm not a prophet, nor do I do any crystal gazing. Now, I believe the agreement will hold.
Oh.
I believe the agreement will hold. It is far too valuable for both Iran and the United States. They're, they have put in a lot of themselves into this. Look at the first line itself, the first para, the clause 1. It says ending of all conflict in perpetuity, permanently ending all conflict. So yes, I would say to you that it is the blueprint for genuine long-term peace in the region. It is also not anti-Israel. I'm looking at a scenario. See, Israel has tried out confrontation and conflict from 1948 till today. Can anyone tell us what they have gained, what they have actually achieved in this period of conflict? They have gained nothing. They have killed a large number of people, but they have killed people who are nothing, who are ordinary civilians. The scenario globally today, with regard to the global opinion relating to Israel, has really plummeted. Israel is today bottom in terms of world opinion. Americans also have turned against Israel. So I would say I'm looking at a scenario where Israel could have a revive. May not happen just now, maybe in 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. Maybe it has a new set of politicians. We should not judge politicians when there is a run up to the election. Naftali Bennett is as right wing as Netanyahu, perhaps more so. But he's like 15, 20 years younger, so he's the future. He put together a coalition once, an extraordinary coalition from the right to the center left, and to the left, and included two Arab parties as well.
Mhm.
It collapsed because Naftali Bennett could not disengage himself from the traditional Likud positions with regard to West Bank, etc. I would ask you this. You gave the chance to the extreme right wing, hardcore xenophobic and racist. They have killed 1,000 people in the West Bank. Since we had the peace agreement in Gaza in October last year, they've killed nearly 1,000 people in Gaza. They've killed 4,000 people in Lebanon. They've killed 7,000 people in Iran. I want to ask, what has Israel gained? So I am not ruling out the scenario. If the Americans play their cards well, if the Americans stop arming Israel with state of the art equipment and pandering to the far right in Israel, you could have a genuine change in the region. Therefore, I hesitate to say, as a result of the Iran war, whether it is victory or defeat. It is Iran held its own and did not collapse in the face of the onslaught, but it took a lot of damage. It has been hurt quite badly. Israel also has been hurt quite badly. It's a small country. Several hundred of its soldiers have been killed. A month ago, I read a news item that about 900 Israeli soldiers have been killed. Now, these are completely avoidable deaths. These young people had no business to be killed. These are young people looking at a great future. Their country is a developed country. It's a technological leader. So I would say to you, I am looking at this point in a very optimistic and positive manner. Let the peace hold. Let the Americans realize. Now, you and I know the negatives as much as anybody. Donald Trump is not the best role player with regard to his limited attention span, limited understanding, absence of knowledge of strategic issues. But he has been mortally wounded. He has been mortally wounded by Netanyahu, who had put before him the image of the greatest president the United States has had, and has made him a laughing stock in his own country. He will not forgive that. Therefore, maybe for the wrong reasons, you could see Donald Trump ensuring that the rift with Netanyahu persists and there is peace in the region finally. Just as Iran can be brought back into as a normal state, engaged with the rest of the community, focusing on issues that matter, construction, logistical connectivity, energy related matters, and technology related matters. I think there is a lot of positive agenda that can be given a fillip by the principal players in the region.
Mehta Saab, thank you very much for your candid comments and observations, and we'll keep coming back to you. It was wonderful talking to you. We, I think, are at a cusp of something significantly different happening in the Gulf, I think, and it will be fascinating just to observe what is happening. So thank you very much for joining Khanversations.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm sorry that I interrupted your holiday.
No, that's all right.
But these current affairs don't wait. We need to get our act as quickly as possible. So thank you very much.